Okay. I haven't even got a name for this show yet or anything like that. So welcome Karalee Katsambanis. Now Karalee, just for those people at home, she is a journalist, she is a writer, and she is a TV presenter and obviously a commentator as well. But more importantly for what I'm interested in is she's a fabulous author. And she's just written Step Parenting with Purpose, Everything You Wanted to Know or Too Afraid to Ask. Now, this is a really, really, really important book, very relevant book. But before we get into talking to Karalee, disclaimer, Karalee and I go back many, many years, almost 25 years, Karalee?
That's right.
25. We both met each other in Meriden, where we were starting our respective careers. I was starting out in radio and Karalee was starting out as a journalist. So that's the disclaimer. So we know each other from way back then. So I'm very proud that Karalee's brought this book out. Very relevant. But first questions first, Karalee. What I want to ask you is, why are you so passionate about step parenting? What's the story?
I'm passionate about step parenting because I just think that it's one of the most important roles that someone can do. The reason why I say it is that when I became a step parent, I had no children. And I came into the lives of two children that were 10 and 11, and they're now 26 and 25. And I purposely waited until I'd been a pet step parent for nearly 15 years before I wrote this book, because I believe that quite often when you write about things after an event, even though I'll always be a step parent, you're much more clear-headed, you've got better advice, more objective advice, you're not writing from an emotional reaction, you're actually weighing things up and considering. And what I found is that one of the sayings that I love when I talk to people about step parenting is I remind them that your ex is not your children's ex. And I think that is really important to remember. I'm going to say it again. Your ex is not your children's ex.
Okay, I can see my brain quietly exploding there, but I get it, yes.
Yeah, and so around the world, doesn't matter where you're a step parent, a very common theme that step parents pick up on is that when they come into their stepchildren's lives, it's very rare that there's been an amicable split. Anyone that divorces, it's never just amicable. It would be 1% of people. So what I think people forget is that if the kids are with a certain parent for, say, 10 days or 1 week off and they come 1 week off, one of the parents can't but help themselves make some derogatory comments about, for example, their father or their mother or whoever the children live with. And it's so important to remember that you're talking about the father or the mother of your stepchildren. And you're also talking about perhaps the stepfather or the stepmother of your children who has made a decision to come into their lives and hopefully make a really positive difference. So I'm passionate about step parenting because I've really seen the good, the bad and the ugly. And while there's no one size fits all for families, however they're made up, there is a right way and a wrong way to go about doing things. And my book hopefully provides the right way so that people won't make the 101 mistakes. And the people that say, oh no, I don't do that, perhaps they'll read my book and find out that yes, you're all human, we all make mistakes, and perhaps you are doing some of those things that you don't think you're doing because you're the adult, but you're not looking at it from your children's perspective or from a child's view of the world.
And I think that's one of the angles that I really love about the book is obviously because I've got a vested interest in children's mental well-being, emotional well-being, and the strong focus of your book is about, you know, look, it may be a cliche, but it's true. Think about the kids, because if the kids are going to walk away, are they going to walk away with trauma after this and going to need therapy? You know, that's the other thing. Because I know that from my personal experience that when my parents divorced and Dad got his girlfriend, you know, so she ended up being kind of the step parent, it was just a dog's breakfast. It was just, and if they had a book like this that either one of them could read or they could sit in bed and read it together or something like that, they would go, oh, okay, maybe it's not all about me. I have to really take a step back and go, let's think about the kids. What emotional impact is that going to be having on the kids as well? And that's one of the things I like in your book is that the advice you give is so down to earth. It is so practical. It's no frills. it's even as practical as, like, I love what you say about the grandparents. You know, all the pictures of all the old, you know, the old wife and the old husband, the old wedding photos, put them away. Don't keep them on display so the new partner has to keep seeing them all the time. That's just something that you wouldn't even think about. But that means, okay, I'm considering the other person, and I'm ready to accept the other person into my life, into their life. So I think that's great advice. So why did you sort of wanted to be so direct?
Because I always say I wrote this book because this was the book that I wished I'd had 15 years ago. I've been very lucky in my career that I was a journalist and in newspapers, radio and television. And of course, as a journalist, you have to adopt an objective approach to all the stories you do. As a columnist, as a commentator, you can have your own view, but you've got to present the facts. I'm very blessed that I've got a very objective looking brain, or an objective working brain, but I can see that quite a few things that I initially encountered, a lot of people would just walk away instead of looking at it from the other side. In my husband's case, he was the first divorce in a very large Greek family. Since then, quite a few other cousins and things have separated, but in the beginning, there's a lot of pressure. And the funny thing is, it was actually my husband, and it didn't bother me. Okay, when I first went into his parents' house and we get on fantastically, there were the old wedding photos up, and there were the photos of when his children were little. Any other person would have just completely freaked out and gone away. This went on for a while, but it was actually my husband that pointed it out to his parents that he actually didn't want to see them at all. Now, there's a fine line as a grandparent, because your ex, in my situation, their ex-daughter-in-law is the mother of their grandchildren. And I didn't have a problem with any photos being up. But there does come a point where when you've remarried or you've repartnered and there's a whole new set of photos, you can't really display both of them up there, can you? And no. I just make a point to the grandparents that it's not about erasing history. It's not even about throwing photos away or ruining them, but just perhaps think a little bit more about it. Yes, it is your house and you're entitled to do whatever you want to do. But the number one thing is, if your son has a new partner, they've chosen that. It may not be what you want. They've chosen that. That relationship initially has ended. They've moved on. You also have to move on as well. Otherwise, you're putting at risk your relationship with your own son or daughter as well. It's very hard as older parents. It's a different generational thing. They worry about what's going to happen with their grandchildren or this or that. If there's never been a divorce or a separation of family at all, I mean, they've all watched Dr. Phil's and Oprah's and things like that, and the mind can sort of boggle, but it's just about trying to be a little bit sensible. And I just wanted to bring up one point that you mentioned before, and I will tell you this, in my book, every single example is completely true. It's either happened to me or I've actually verified that it's happened firsthand. So all the examples in the book are true. I would like to get people to think about this. I'm now 15 years into the step parenting journey. My children, so they're the brother and the sisters of my husband's children, naturally. They're technically half siblings, but they're always related. I will tell you, to some people out there whose children who are step parents or the families have split, they're now a blended family. On a school sports day, the children are not worried about coming first or second in a running race or an athletics carnival or a swimming carnival. The stress that your children will feel, it comes down to the relationship between you and your ex and you and the step parents. I've been through this and I've witnessed this in the last few years. And it's lovely if there are mum and dad who have split and they've repartnered and all four of them go to little Johnny's swimming carnival, fantastic. But little Johnny, that is a very rare case. Little Johnny is petrified as to what may happen. Will there be an argument? Will there be a blow up? Will there be a snub? Will there be two parents on one side of the fence, on one side of the ticker tape and two on the other? That is their overriding worry. And that, to avoid that, means that when you've separated and you've repartnered, you owe it to look years ahead for having some good working relationships so that when those events do happen, the kids can feel at ease.
And those events will always happen, won't they? And you can't
That's
avoid
right. Well,
them.
they will.
Yeah, yeah. And that's
And it does. Sorry, it doesn't mean that the dad and the stepdad, or the, you know, in our case, a tradition, a dad and a stepdad or a mum and a stepmum have to go and get 4 coffees together and sit there and smile and have hugs and stuff. That is at one end of the spectrum, animosity is at the other. There's got to be a clear working ground. So in other words, if little Johnny runs up to the stepmum before the mum, and little Johnny is living with mum most of the time, he's not going to get it in the neck that night saying, why did you go to your stepmother first after your race? You should come to me. I mean, all that type of thing. And it's just about having good working relationships, because you're meant to be thinking of the children. And we use our adult minds, but we don't see things through the children's minds.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. And I can only use my own life example of that. And I don't think it even occurs to a lot of parents to actually shift their focus, even though they go, oh, we don't want to upset the kids or whatever, but it is still such an emotionally charged environment. And what you're saying in the book is, for the sake of everyone, try and step away from the emotion, be a bit more logical, be a bit more analytical, and just look at it and just do what needs to be done, talk to each other and negotiate. That's the kind of thing you talk about, isn't it?
It sure is. I mean, I'll give you an example. For 2 years, my husband would do all the driving and the pickup when it was our custody turn from his ex-wife's, because she was angry about the split in the very beginning. And the kids would traditionally come to us every alternate Thursday night and be picked up at 5 o'clock on a Sunday. And I would watch them from about 4:30 to 20 to 5. There would be a heightened sense of anxiety. And they had a mobile phone, and they would be sitting on the sofa, and they would be jiggling their knee and fidgeting and just literally getting like I am now. And their mum would send them a text, and she would park right up the road, and they would quickly go out of our house with suitcases. It was like seven, you know, what with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and they'll go up path and up the street. And I remember saying to my husband, look, what is wrong with your ex just knocking on the door, one of us opening it, kids, your mum's here? And I spoke about this later with my stepson years and years later. And he said, look, it just would have taken the weirdness out of it. Because he said, in my mind, if I'd known that, you know, that it's okay to open the door, and I don't see anything wrong with it. Now, as I said, that's one end of the spectrum, but our experience was far more common than probably people want to admit. And that's why I'm saying you don't need to invite your ex-partner's new partner into your home for a 20-minute coffee when they're picking up the kids. But surely you must be able to open the door, say to your stepkids, mum or dad's here, and then say, go have a nice week with it, go see you next time, so that there's a bit of a normality in the kids' minds, because that wasn't normal. And then it was funny, it was my stepson that actually said to his mum, hey mum, the kids at school whose parents are divorced, one drops them off and one picks them up. Do you think we can do that for dad and KT, which is what they call me? And so then after 2 years, there was a little bit more flexibility, and either they would be dropped to us and we'd drop them home, because it's a lot of extra driving and this, that, and what have you.
It took the son to be the adult in that situation, really.
And that's what I'm saying. He had observed things, and he'd listened to other kids at school whose parents had separated or divorced, and he thought, this is just not normal for my dad to be driving up on the Thursday night, picking us up and driving us back. But of course, my husband's ex-wife was of that mindset, well, you want to see the kids, you've got to get them, which is like the classic 101 that you shouldn't do. It's not thinking of the kids.
No, exactly. So look, to leave this conversation with, what is the one or two things, the most important things that you think that we should be focusing on, whether it's a family, whether it's an individual, the biggest thing in life that we really should be focusing on?
I think number one is treat people like you would want to be treated. Don't have a Machiavellian agenda. And also, every day, try and make a difference in someone's life. Try and make a difference in someone's life, whether it's a thank you to the supermarket checkout chick, whether it's taking the bin out for the neighbour, without expecting something in return. I'm a big believer in karma and the universe. What you put out there will eventually come back to you. far too many people nowadays in the very high pressured world that we live in do something because they want to get something back, either monetarily or they want to get some kind of an advantage. And I think
recognition or something.
Some recognition. And I think really at the end of the day, what this COVID-19 period has shown us is we're trying to get to know ourselves again. We're trying to get to know our children again. We're trying to get to know our neighbours and our friends again, because we're always busy, overscheduled. So I would just say, you know, make a difference in someone's life by actually being there, being present and listening to what they want from you.
Being
and
a good listener.
Like you want to be treated. Being a good listener.
Yeah. It's just coming back to the basics, isn't it, really? Where can people get your book from?
Okay, Josh, thank you. They can get my book from my website, which is KaraleeKatsambanis.com. They can get it off Amazon and they can get it off Booktopia. It is also available in 3 local Dymocks in Western Australia at the moment: Joondalup, Ellenbrook and Karrinyup.
Fantastic. Karalee, thank you very much for joining us. This is a very interesting conversation. I think step parenting is something that it's always going to be around, but if we can have a little bit of help, such as something from your book, that is just brilliant. So thank you very much, Karalee.
Well, thank you, Josh, and thank you for all your support in 25 years of friendship. You're just an amazing, amazing friend.
Thank you.